Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something, y'all. You don't need a room full of people to feel love. You don't need applause to feel valuable. You don't need someone beside you to feel complete. Being alone is not a punishment, it's a privilege. Some of y'all scared of being alone because you never learned how powerful it actually is. Happiness starts within, not with others. That truth might sound simple, but it's the hardest reality for many people to accept. So many of us have been conditioned to believe that joy, love, peace, and fulfillment all come from external sources, relationships, friendships, social media approval, or even material things. But real happiness doesn't come wrapped in someone else's affection or arrive when everything finally goes your way. It's something you build internally, something that begins when you learn to value your own presence and not depend on someone else's to feel good. Most people are afraid of being alone because they haven't taken the time to get to know themselves. They've distracted themselves with noise, people, and activity, never sitting still long enough to ask themselves what they actually like, what truly makes them feel alive, or what brings them peace. When you're alone, you face the rawest version of yourself. There's no audience, no performance, no filters, just you. And in that moment, you get a choice. You can either run from yourself, blaming the world for your unhappiness, or you can do the hard work of becoming someone you genuinely like. That's the root of happiness. When you stop looking outward and start going inward, everything changes. You stop chasing people who don't see your worth. You stop needing approval to feel important. You begin to trust your instincts, follow your values, and create a life that reflects who you are, not who people expect you to be. There's a kind of peace that comes when you no longer need other people to tell you that you matter. Some people think happiness is about being constantly surrounded by others. But if you need a crowd to feel good about yourself, then what happens when the room empties? You're left with the person you were avoiding, yourself. That's why happiness has to start from the inside. It's about waking up in the morning and not needing a text from someone to feel seen. It's about being able to sit with silence and not feel anxious. It's about being enough without needing anyone to say it. The danger of building your happiness on others is that people are human. They change, they leave, they disappoint. But when you've built your joy on your own foundation, you're not shaken by who stays or who walks out. It takes time and it takes effort. Learning to enjoy your own company doesn't mean isolating yourself or giving up on connection. It just means your joy isn't dependent on who shows up. You can be happy when you're single, when you're in a relationship, or when you're surrounded by people. But your happiness isn't tied to any of that. You carry it with you because it lives inside you. That's when you stop needing relationships to feel whole and start wanting them to simply enhance what you've already built. You begin to choose people who match your peace instead of those who disturb it. You begin to attract better experiences because you operate from a place of confidence and security, not desperation or loneliness. Happiness from within means taking responsibility for how you feel. It means refusing to let the world control your emotions. You understand that your attitude, your mindset, and your habits play a bigger role in your joy than anything outside of you. It's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about finding gratitude even in the middle of the mess. It's about showing up for yourself on the hard days and still believing you're worthy of love and joy. When happiness lives within you, you're free. You're no longer a prisoner to someone else's presence, attention, or validation. You realize you've had the key all along. You just had to stop looking everywhere else to find it. Alone time is powerful for growth and self-discovery. When you are constantly surrounded by people, their voices, their opinions, and their energy begin to shape how you think, how you feel, and how you act. While relationships and community are important, there comes a point where too much external influence can cloud your own voice. It's only in solitude that you truly begin to hear yourself clearly. That's when your mind quiets down and you begin to ask the questions that matter. Who am I? What do I want? What do I believe in? What kind of life do I want to live? These questions don't get answered in a crowded room or during back-to-back conversations. They get answered in silence, in stillness, in the moments when it's just you and your thoughts. Spending time alone gives you the space to unpack your experiences and emotions without interference. You get to reflect on what hurt you, what healed you, and what you're still holding on to. You learn how to process your past and stop letting it control your future. It's in solitude that you understand your emotional triggers, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your desires. That understanding becomes the foundation of your personal growth. You stop reacting to life and start responding with intention. You become more self-aware, and that awareness helps you make better decisions about your relationships, your work, your habits, and your boundaries. Most people are afraid to be alone because they're scared of what they'll find in the silence. They stay busy to avoid the parts of themselves they don't want to confront. But healing and growth don't happen through distraction. They happen when you face yourself honestly and begin the work of transformation. Alone time isn't about being lonely. It's about being available to do the work that can't be done when you're constantly giving your energy to others. You learn to be your own companion, your own guide, and your own motivator. That builds emotional independence. And that's a powerful kind of strength. When you don't need someone else to make you feel secure or fulfilled, you become unstoppable in solitude. You also reconnect with your creativity. When your mind is not being pulled in a dozen directions, ideas begin to surface, solutions appear, visions become clear. Some of the greatest innovations, breakthroughs, and life-changing ideas are born in moments of solitude. You begin to see what's possible when you're not trying to please anyone or live up to anyone's expectations. You get to imagine, plan, and build without compromise. You start to remember the passions you buried, the dreams you forgot, and the version of yourself you put on the shelf just to fit in. You begin to reclaim your identity and your purpose. Alone time also helps you reset. When you spend too much time engaging with others, especially in draining environments, you can lose touch with your own energy. Being alone allows you to recharge emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. It's like a detox from the noise of the world. It clears the clutter in your head so you can focus on what truly matters. You start to notice the small things again, the way you breathe, the sound of nature, the calmness in your own presence. That peace becomes addictive, not because it's quiet, but because it's real. When you embrace being alone, you learn how to hold space for yourself. You learn patience. You learn how to sit through discomfort without running from it. That's where true growth happens, not when things are easy, but when you're tested and you choose to stay and grow instead of escape. Alone time reveals your resilience. It shows you that you don't need constant company to be whole. You become someone who doesn't just survive in solitude, you thrive in it. Stop seeking validation and become your own cheerleader. One of the greatest roadblocks to inner peace and happiness is the constant need for approval from others. People live their lives trying to be liked, to be accepted, to be noticed, and to be applauded. Social media has made it even worse. Every like, every comment, every view becomes a silent measurement of self-worth. But the truth is, the more you depend on others to validate you, the more you give away your power. You hand them the keys to your joy, your confidence, and your identity. And once they have that control, you become a prisoner to opinions that are constantly changing. When you seek validation, you stop living for yourself. You start shaping your life around what others think is good for you. Even when your soul disagrees, you start second-guessing your dreams because someone else didn't clap. You suppress your voice because someone rolled their eyes. That's no way to live. You can't build a fulfilling life if you're waiting for someone else to sign off on your potential. The world is full of people who will doubt you, ignore you, or misunderstand you. But none of that matters if you already believe in yourself. When your confidence comes from within, the outside noise loses its power. Becoming your own cheerleader means showing up for yourself every single day, especially when no one else does. It means looking in the mirror and being proud of how far you've come, even if no one sees the battles you fought in silence. It's about reminding yourself that you are worthy even when others don't say it. When you clap for yourself, you stop waiting for others to give you permission to feel proud. You stop begging for recognition, and instead you become the source of your own encouragement. That kind of mindset builds emotional freedom. You no longer live in fear of rejection because your self-worth is not tied to acceptance. People will always have opinions, and many of them won't even know the full story. Some will criticize you out of jealousy, others out of ignorance. If you keep adjusting yourself to please everyone, you'll lose yourself in the process. That's why self-confrontation is not arrogance, it's protection. It's choosing to value your own voice above the noise. It's trusting your intuition when others question your choices. It's knowing that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. You begin to realize that the only validation that matters is the one that comes from your own soul. When you are your own cheerleader, you become resilient. You bounce back faster because you don't need applause to keep going. You know how to lift yourself when things fall apart. You celebrate your own wins, big or small, and that builds momentum. You speak kindly to yourself, not because life is perfect, but because you've learned that your inner dialogue shapes your reality. You stop being your own worst critic and start being your biggest supporter. That shift changes everything. It affects how you walk into rooms, how you handle failure, and how you deal with success. Confidence rooted in self-motivation is unshakable. It's not loud, but it's strong. It doesn't demand attention, it radiates from within. Learning to validate yourself is also an act of self-respect. It's about saying, I am enough, whether anyone else believes it or not. It's a commitment to stay loyal to your truth, even when it's unpopular. You begin to pursue your goals with boldness because you're no longer weighed down by the need for constant reassurance. You trust your progress, your process, and your purpose. You understand that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. If you're not living for their approval, you're living for your peace, your growth, and your truth. Use solitude to chase purpose, not pity. Most people view being alone as something negative. They see it as a void that needs to be filled, a gap in their life that reminds them of what's missing. But solitude is not a curse. It's a calling. It's a sacred opportunity to go inward, to dig deep, and to uncover the life you were meant to live. When you're alone, you're not being punished. You're being prepared. Solitude gives you space to disconnect from distractions, opinions, and noise, so you can reconnect with clarity, focus, and truth. Instead of using that time to feel sorry for yourself or dwell on what's not going right, you can use it to chase your purpose with undivided attention. When you're surrounded by people constantly, your energy gets divided. You're pulled in different directions, answering to different needs, and trying to juggle multiple roles. But in solitude, everything slows down. The fog clears. You have the chance to ask yourself honest questions about where you're going, what you want, and why you're doing what you're doing. It's in those quiet moments that your true purpose begins to rise. You stop living by default and start living with intention. The goals that once felt distant begin to feel reachable because now you have time to strategize and move with purpose. You no longer feel the pressure to match someone else's pace. because you finally focus on your own path. Purpose doesn't scream, it whispers, and you can only hear it when you're still. If you keep avoiding solitude and distracting yourself with company just to avoid feeling lonely, you'll miss the calling that's meant for you. Pity is easy. Anyone can sit and complain about what's not going right or who's not there for them. But purpose requires discipline. It requires using your alone time wisely. You have to choose to see solitude as fuel, not failure. Every moment you spend alone can be invested into becoming the best version of yourself. You can use that time to read, to write, to plan, to work out, to learn, to heal, and to grow. When you replace self-pity with self-development, everything in your life starts to shift. You gain momentum. You build confidence. You start to feel proud of yourself again, not because someone else told you to be, but because you know you've been putting in the work. You stop looking at being alone as something that makes you weak and begin to see it as something that makes you unstoppable. That's what purpose does. It gives your solitude meaning. It transforms quiet moments into building blocks for your future. People who operate from pity often wait for someone else to come and fix things. They wait for love, support, opportunities, and motivation to show up from outside sources. But people who operate from purpose don't wait. They create. They turn their alone time into something powerful. They make progress while others are complaining. They choose action over excuses, growth over gossip, and movement over misery. And the more they do it, the stronger they become. Solitude becomes a superpower, not a sadness. The world often tells you that you need a partner, a crowd, or a following to be fulfilled. But purpose doesn't need an audience. You can build something extraordinary in silence. You can create a vision and start executing it step by step, even if no one is watching. You don't need a cheerleading squad when your mission is clear. You just need focus, faith, and consistency. Solitude gives you the space to cultivate those things without distraction. It allows you to fall in love with the process and trust that the right people, the right moments, and the right breakthroughs will come when they're supposed to. Train your mind to be peaceful without company. In today's world, silence is almost seen as a threat, and being alone feels unnatural to many people. We're constantly surrounded by noise. Notifications, conversations, television, music, endless scrolling. It's become second nature to keep our minds busy, distracted, and occupied. But peace doesn't grow in chaos, and clarity doesn't come from noise. If you always rely on the presence of others or external stimulation to feel calm, you're not really at peace. You're just distracted from your discomfort. True peace is when you can sit with your thoughts alone in silence and not feel uneasy or incomplete. That kind of peace comes from training your mind just like you would train your body or your skills. At first, being alone with your thoughts may feel uncomfortable. You may feel restless, anxious, even bored. But those feelings are not signs that something is wrong. They're signs that you're not used to facing yourself. Most people never take time to examine what's really going on inside their minds. They move from one distraction to the next, hoping to outrun their fears, insecurities, regrets, and doubt. But the more you run from yourself, the less peace you have. Training your mind to be peaceful means facing those emotions instead of running. It means allowing yourself to sit in the discomfort and letting it teach you instead of fearing it. This training doesn't happen overnight. It requires small steps, like taking a walk without your phone, sitting in silence for a few minutes a day, or journaling your thoughts instead of venting them to someone else. It means creating space in your day to be still, to breathe deeply, and to listen to your own inner dialogue. Over time, you start to notice your mental habits. You catch negative self-talk, worry, and overthinking more quickly. And because you're not avoiding them with outside distractions, you actually begin to change those habits. You start replacing fear with faith, anxiety with mindfulness, and confusion with clarity. Peace without company is a skill, not a personality trait. It's not reserved for monks or introverts. It's available to anyone willing to slow down and look within. When your peace isn't tied to people, you become emotionally independent. That doesn't mean you reject relationships or isolate yourself. It means you're not emotionally dependent on anyone to feel okay. You stop needing constant reassurance or company to feel settled. You develop an inner calm that follows you everywhere, whether you're in a crowd or completely alone. This kind of inner peace changes how you show up in the world. You become less reactive. You don't panic over delays, disappointments, or silence. You begin to operate with more patience and intention. You're less easily influenced by negativity or drama because you've already created a quiet, grounded place within yourself. That peace becomes your home, and no one else can disturb it unless you let them. It's not about ignoring emotions or pretending everything's fine. It's about managing your emotions instead of being controlled by them. One of the most freeing realizations is that you don't need to be constantly entertained, talked to, or surrounded by people to feel happy. There is strength in being content with your own company. There is clarity in choosing stillness. There is wisdom in listening before speaking, observing before reacting, and reflecting before judging. When your mind learns to find calm in solitude, you unlock a new level of freedom. You don't fear silence anymore. You welcome it. You don't dread being alone. You embrace it. Because you know that peace was never outside of you to begin with. It was something you had to practice, to develop, and to protect. Loneliness is a mindset. Switch it with gratitude. Many people confuse being alone with being lonely, but those two are not the same. Loneliness is a feeling that grows out of lack of connection, lack of companionship, lack of attention. But being alone is simply a state of physical solitude, and it doesn't have to carry emotional weight. The feeling of loneliness comes from the stories we tell ourselves when we are by ourselves. We start to believe that we are missing something essential, that our life is incomplete without another person, or that we are somehow less valuable because no one is currently beside us. But all of that is created in the mind, and the mind can be trained to see things differently. When you shift your focus from what's missing to what's present, from lack to abundance, that's when loneliness begins to fade and gratitude starts to grow. Gratitude is one of the most powerful tools to fight loneliness because it shifts your mindset from victimhood to empowerment. Instead of waking up and thinking about who isn't calling, who walked away, or who doesn't understand you, you start waking up and noticing what is still working in your life. You notice the breath in your lungs, the roof over your head, the food on your plate, and the strength you have to keep going. You stop needing something dramatic to happen to feel thankful. You begin to value the little things that so many people take for granted. That appreciation fills the emotional space that loneliness once occupied. Every time you feel alone, it becomes a moment to practice gratitude. You get to look inward and reflect on how far you've come, how many storms you've survived, and how much you've grown even when no one was clapping for you. You start to see solitude not as punishment, but as preparation. When your heart is full of gratitude, it becomes difficult to dwell in sadness, not because you ignore your pain, but because you no longer allow it to be louder than your blessing. Gratitude doesn't erase your struggles, but it helps you carry them with more grace. It gives your mind a new direction, a new narrative, one where you're not constantly wishing for something more, but deeply honoring what already is. This change in mindset also affects how you view yourself. When you stop defining your worth based on your relationship status, your friend circle, or your social interactions, you start valuing yourself as a whole, complete person. You no longer see being single or spending time alone as something to be fixed. You see it as something to be embraced. You realize that peace, joy, and meaning don't come from other people filling your life, but from you learning to feel your own soul first. And the more grateful you become, the more emotionally rich your life begins to feel. Gratitude also teaches you presence. Loneliness often grows from constantly living in the past or worrying about the future, thinking about the people who left or the ones who haven't arrived yet. But gratitude brings you into the now. It grounds you in the present moment and helps you find joy in what you have right now. Whether it's a quiet morning, a cup of coffee, a favorite song, or a moment of stillness, gratitude opens your eyes to see that you are never truly lacking. You just forgot to look closely enough. It takes intention and repetition to rewire your mindset. At first, it might feel forced or unfamiliar to practice gratitude when you feel alone. But over time, it becomes natural. Your mind starts searching for the good instead of the gaps. Your heart begins to rest instead of ache. You carry yourself differently because your identity is no longer rooted in what's absent, but in what's abundant. You begin to realize that being alone is not the enemy. Being ungrateful is. Gratitude doesn't just change how you feel when you're alone. It changes how you live altogether.